The year is 1987, and apparently they thought that in 2025, the government would be making up facts to go after political enemies. The masses would be so enamored with media that they would believe anything that they saw in front of them, and there would be food riots. I don't think they were that far off. This is The Running Man.
An innocent man accused of a crime has a choice. Hard time or prime time.
Sensational. Perfect contestant. I want him.
He must pay or play the running man.
On your mark.
I'll be back.
Go!
The highest rated TV show in history.
Guess they want us to stay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Random Rewatch. As always, this is Mike, and we are doing the 1987 Arnold Schwarzenegger film, The Running Man, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, Richard Dawson, and Maria Conchita Alonzo. And as I'm recording that this week, there is another adaptation of The Running Man coming out, starring Glenn Powell, directed by Edgar Wright. We'll talk about that a little bit at the end. But we are here to look at the 1987 version of this. This is based on a 1982 novel written by Stephen King under the pen name Richard Bachman. Stephen King wrote a couple of books under Bachman for a couple of different reasons. One was that back in the 70s and 80s, it was thought that an author should really only put out one book a year. Stephen King was more prolific than that, and so he convinced his publisher to allow him to publish other books under a different name. The other thing was that he wanted to know whether or not his success was due to luck or due to the fact that his books were actually really good. And so the Bachman books had very little marketing, and he wanted to see if they could be as successful as books marketed under the name Stephen King. Unfortunately, people figured out Richard Bachman was Stephen King too early for the experiment to really come to a conclusion, and it went away pretty quickly. But this book was written under the name Richard Bachman, but it is actually Stephen King who wrote the book. So the novel is set in the year 2025, and it's a little bit different than we see in this movie. The world, or especially America, is a totalitarian dystopia. There was a major earthquake that had hit that had devastated parts of Los Angeles. The government was basically sold out completely to the media. The biggest television show in the country or in the world was this TV show, The Running Man. And in the book, they would do is they would take people who were down on their luck, people who were out of work, who were desperate, and put them into the show. And they would have to go into really the public and survive for 30 days with the public hunting them. And it was a lot more kind of depressing, let's be honest, a lot more realistic than this movie is. So the book was optioned almost immediately by producer George Linder. He paid Stephen King $120,000 for the rights to make a movie out of this book. Kind of kicked around for a couple of years. By 1985, Christopher Reeve was attached to the film to star as Ben Richards. It was set to start shooting in September of 1985, and at this point, the script that they were working on was a pretty close parallel to what the book is. By January of 1986, filming had not started yet. Christopher Reeve was out. Arnold Schwarzenegger was in. So because it was now an Arnold Schwarzenegger action film, they took it away from what the original idea was that it was a very dark dystopian allegory, and decided to make it into more of like a traditional action thriller. The idea of somebody going into the game for 30 days in order to feed their family was turned into political prisoners were put into the game for a 3-hour broadcast. So the film went through a couple of directors. The first one was George Cosmatos. He had directed Rambo First Blood Part 2 with Sylvester Stallone in 1985. He got fired for creative differences right around the time Reeve left the project, and they brought in Andrew Davis, who had directed the Chuck Norris action film Code of Silence. Originally, the film was going to be shot in Edmonton in Canada, but when it got reworked, they moved filming to Los Angeles, Andrew Davis started shooting in September of 1986. He lasted 2 weeks because just 8 days in, he was apparently $400,000 over budget and 4 days behind schedule. So then they did what a lot of studios will do in productions like this that are running behind and need to be brought up to schedule quickly, is they hired a television director. And in this case, they hired Paul Michael Glaser, who was best known to people as Starsky in the hit TV series from the 70s, Starsky and Hutch. But he was becoming a pretty well-known director. He had directed several episodes of Starsky and Hutch. He directed several episodes of Miami Vice. He had done a small film, but he had never really done a big-budget feature. But television directors are kind of a different breed than film directors in that they are used to operating on a schedule. And, you know, you've got a week to get the show done, and that's what they do. And so you'll see sometimes that productions will bring television staff in when a film is running behind because those guys are just used to just being on the clock. So like I said, the filming was moved to Los Angeles. They built sound stages in Hollywood. They also used an abandoned steel mill in Fontana, California for the game zone shots. And they did some shooting at an ice rink in, I think it was in Pasadena. They did shooting at Los Angeles International Airport for the airport sequences. You know, shooting in LA is cheap, and they had to get this film back on budget. The final script was written by Stephen E. D'Souza, who was known for doing action movies in the 80s and 90s. He had done films like 48 Hours, Commando, and he would go on to do work on Die Hard, Die Hard 2, Hudson Hawk, Judge Dredd. So this film was really kind of in his wheelhouse. The film was shot by cinematographer Thomas Del Ruth, who had done movies at this point, like he did The Breakfast Club, he did Fandango, he did Stand By Me with Rob Reiner, he did Death Wish 2, and this film's kind of got a similar aesthetic to that in a lot of ways. Music for this film is done by Harold Faltermeyer. He is a German composer. He began his career as a session musician, working with a lot of artists in the 70s. He was mentoring under composer Giorgio Moroder, but then started doing his own work. He had done at this point in his career, he had done Beverly Hills Cop, you know, the Axel F theme. That's him. Top Gun, he did the Top Gun opening theme. That was him. He did the scores for both of those movies, Beverly Hills Cop 2, Fletch, Fatal Beauty. And he did the score for Top Gun 2, Maverick. So still working. All right, so let's get into it. So we have an opening crawl that explains that in 2017, the world economy has collapsed. Food and natural resources and oil are in short supply. The world is a police state. It's divided into paramilitary zones. TV is controlled by the state. That all art and all music is censored and has to be approved. And that the biggest television show in history is a sadistic game show called The Running Man. And so that's kind of where we start off, is with this bit of information. And we cut to a scene where there's a helicopter flying over a crowd that's involved in a food riot. And we see Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I think this is the first Arnold Schwarzenegger movie we've done. So let's talk about him a little bit. Obviously born in Austria. His father was a local police chief and had been a military policeman involved in the Battle of Leningrad. Arnold would go on to say that his father was abusive to him when he was a child. He would start lifting weights at the age of 15, won the Mr. Universe title at the age of 20, and then would go on to win the Mr. Olympia title 7 times. He was in a bodybuilding documentary named Pumping Iron in 1977. That film mainly talked about the competition for Mr. Olympia and dealt with the competition specifically between Schwarzenegger and Lou Ferrigno, who would go on to play the Incredible Hulk on television in the 70s. Schwarzenegger claims that it was his idea to portray him as kind of a villain in the film, even though it's a documentary. Who knows if that's really true or that's just Arnold being Arnold. In 1982, he was cast in the John Milius film Conan the Barbarian, which was co-written by Oliver Stone and also starred James Earl Jones. His career was really kind of off, and there was a sequel to that film, kind of a campy sequel to that film in 1984. By the way, if you really want some entertainment, watch Conan the Barbarian with the commentary track that Schwarzenegger did. It is sublime. It really is. Listening to Arnold Schwarzenegger describe Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm really bummed that there's two commentary tracks on the DVD of this film, of The Running Man, and neither one of them has Arnold Schwarzenegger in it. And I was really kind of bummed about that. He was then cast in a little indie film by an up-and-coming director, James Cameron, called The Terminator. You may have heard of it. And then the guy just really became a filmmaking machine. I mean, he had been in a couple of other small roles, but starting with Conan in 82, and then Conan the Destroyer and The Terminator in 84, Red Sonja and Commando in 85, Raw Deal in 86, Predator and The Running Man in 87, Red Heat and Twins in 88, Total Recall and Kindergarten Cop in 1990, Terminator 2 in 1991. I mean, this guy just goes on and on and on, and then he would wind up obviously marrying into the Kennedy family, becoming governor of California, just an underachiever in every way. But anyway, so he is playing Ben Richards, who is a police officer and apparently a helicopter pilot. He is ordered to fire on the crowd and refuses to do so.
Food riot in progress. Approximately 1,500 civilians. No weapons evident.
Proceed with Plan Alpha. Eliminate anything moving.
I said the crowd is unarmed. There are lots of women and children down there. All they want is food, for God's sake.
As you were, Richard. Proceed with Plan Alpha. All rioters must be eliminated.
The hell with you.
I will point out that this whole helicopter sequence is really low budget and really fake. I mean, Airwolf had better helicopter sequences in it. It is clearly like a bunch of guys sitting in a fake helicopter in front of a projector screen. But, you know, it works. Anyway, so he gets taken out by the other guys in the helicopter and gets arrested and winds up a political prisoner. He winds up in the Wilshire Detention Zone, which apparently is like a work site that has a perimeter fence around it, and the prisoners wear these collars that if they cross the perimeter will explode and blow their heads off. He is in the detention zone with a couple prisoners. One's named William Laughlin, played by Yaphet Kotto, who we saw in Alien, and Harold Weiss, who is played by Marvin McIntyre. And they are kind of plotting an escape. Apparently there's some kind of resistance going on, because there's always some kind of resistance going on. And they're going to try to escape and get out to the resistance. We find out that Weiss is like a technical hacker guy, and he's able to hack the fence so they can get out. And we see that, you know, obviously Ben Richards is a big fighter and he can beat everybody up. Not really sure what Laughlin's bringing to the party, but he's there. And in the meantime, we see kind of this promo for this television program, and apparently they show television on big billboards out in the public. And this is a game show called The Running Man.
What's the #1 television show in the whole wide world? Yes!
Yes, it's the Running Man. 400 square blocks of danger.
So these guys wind up escaping, and they make contact with the resistance. The two members of the resistance that we're talking to are Mick and Stevie. Stevie is played by Dweezil Zappa, who is the son of musician Frank Zappa. And Mick is played by Mick Fleetwood, who is one of the co-founders and the drummer and really the band leader for the band Fleetwood Mac. No stunt casting here. So we find out that there is an uplink to the satellite that the resistance thinks that they can capture and broadcast a message over the network, and that the uplink is somewhere in the game zone. Mick is removing the collars from Laughlin and Weiss, and then he gets to Ben, and he's kind of questioning whether or not he should remove Ben's collar, because he's like, this guy's a cop, like, why are we helping him? and they start talking about like the dream of the resistance, and Ben Richards is too much of a pragmatist to really kind of go along with it.
He's the butcher of Bakersfield.
Come on, Mick. You can see through that crap. It's network propaganda.
We don't know that.
We know we wouldn't be here if he hadn't helped us.
We also know he's not one of us.
Perhaps now he's seen too much.
I've seen too much? All I've seen is a bunch of low foreheads who think they can change the world with dreams and talk. It's too late for that. If you're not ready to act, give me a break and shut up.
We cut over to the TV studio or the network office, and we meet the host and producer of the television show The Running Man, and this is Richard Dawson. Dawson is an English actor and comedian. He became really known to American audiences for playing Corporal Newkirk in the TV series Hogan's Heroes. Then he was on a very popular daytime TV game show called Match Game as a regular guest. And eventually he went on to become the original host of a TV game show called Family Feud in 1976. He was known for being really charismatic and really flamboyant, always dressed really well, and was very well known for kissing all the women who would come onto the game show. Apparently, with their express permission, don't want to make any accusations here, but that show has continued on until with various hosts. There was a guy from Home Improvement who was host on it for a while. Louis Anderson was host for a while. There was another guy, I can't remember his name, who was host for a while. And now Steve Harvey is the host of the show. Anyway, so we find out that Damien is one of these guys who is very two-faced and will act one way when he thinks the public is watching him and will act a very different way when he's behind closed doors. And we see this at first with him and the janitor who accidentally hits him with his mop.
Sorry. Hey, that's all right. What's your name?
Van.
Van, you're doing good work. Looks beautiful. Don't worry.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Brenda, if that is mopping the floor tomorrow, you'll be mopping it for the rest of the week. Let's go.
So this was originally they wanted Chuck Woolery, who was another game show host, to play Damien, but he became unavailable or wasn't interested in it. And they got Dawson. I think Dawson's a better choice because he is also an actor, and I think he does a really great job as Damien Killian here. So anyway, we see that Ben is trying to make his way to his brother's apartment, and he walks into the apartment. He knows what the lock code is. He goes in, and he finds out that his brother does not live there anymore, and it is occupied by a young woman named Amber, who is played by Maria Conchita Alonzo. Alonzo was born in Cuba, and her family moved to Venezuela in 1962 following the revolution in Cuba. She was in beauty pageants when she was younger. She was Miss Teenage World in 1971. She was the runner-up for Miss Venezuela in 1975 and was in the top 7 for Miss World later that year. She also was a singer. She put out some albums in the 70s and 80s. She did some Spanish language films starting in the late 70s and through the 80s. Did an episode of Fantasy Island, did an episode of Knight Rider, and her first American film was Moscow on the Hudson in 1984. She was in a couple other films, A Fine Mess, Touch and Go, Extreme Prejudice, Colors in 1988, which is a really good film. She was in Predator 2, and will go on to, have a long career with a lot of acting credits. This was like her third or fourth American English language production. All of her appliances are voice activated, which is kind of cool. She turns on the TV to an aerobic show, which unfortunately is not still a thing here in 2025, but it was a huge thing in the 1980s. This one is Captain Freedom's Workout.
Are you ready for pain? Are you ready for suffering? If the answer is yes, then you're ready for Captain Freedom's Workout.
Yes, it's America's own Captain Freedom. 10-time national champion, the greatest stalker to ever play the game. All right, now,
Captain Freedom here, played by Jesse the Body Ventura, a former wrestler and future governor of Minnesota. We'll talk about him in a little bit. She tells Richards that his brother was taken for re-education whatever that means. Probably because he was associated with a political prisoner. He figures out that she tells him that she is a music composer for the network, that she composed the network jingle. But he figures out that she has like all this contraband music and clothing. So she is not as straight and narrow as her public persona appears to be. Meanwhile, Damien is trying to find another contestant for the show, and they're coming up with some choices for him.
Richard killed his wife and his mother-in-law at a faculty dinner party with a steak knife.
Yeah, see, I like that quality. He's the sort that the neighbors say, such a quiet man. He's never too busy to say hello, but look at him. Weighs 120 pounds. He wouldn't last 30 seconds.
4 counts bestiality.
Who else?
Murder of poster child.
What about those bank robbers? One's made that suicide pact?
Did they commit suicide?
Obviously not, Damon.
Then they're unreliable.
But he sees a video of Ben Richards escaping from the detention zone, and he's the guy that Killian wants. And so he gets on the phone. He's like, get me the Justice Department Entertainment Division. And then he's like, forget that. Get me the president's agent. So this is, an idea that the government and the media are now one thing. Again, not that far off. So Ben gets Amber's travel pass and decides he's going to take her to Honolulu so he can get out of the area. But she betrays him at the airport, and he gets chased down. He gets captured out on the runway with a big net thing and winds up being brought to Killian, where Killian makes him an offer to be on the show.
I think we might be able to help each other out. I've got the brains, and you've got talent. No, you got more. You've got talent, you've got charisma, and you got balls. And that's why I pulled a few strings to get you here. And that's why I'd like you to volunteer to appear on tomorrow's broadcast of The Running Man.
You.
You're a brilliant conversationalist, man.
And Killian tells him that they've also captured Weiss and Laughlin, and he says, look, either you do the show or I'm going to make those two guys do the show. So Ben Richards agrees to do the show. Oh, there's also fake news footage of the airport capture where it says that Ben Richards, killed a bunch of agents at the airport, and Amber's watching it, and she realizes that it's not true and that the network is making the whole thing up.
Officer and mass murderer Ben Richards was filmed yesterday by runway security cameras. Richards' hostage, Amber Mendez, was unharmed. Some airport personnel were not so lucky, like the ticket agent and security guard Richards shot at point-blank range when he arrived at the airport.
But that's not true.
They were taken to Cadre Memorial Hospital, where they remain in guarded condition. And now, back to climbing for dollars.
So we have this kind of cross-cut montage of the opening of the show. We have Ben Richards, who is being advised by not his lawyer, but his agent. I don't think the agent even has a name. He's just credited as the agent. This is Ken Lerner. And that's cross-cut with an opening dance number of the TV show. This dance and all the dances in the TV show are choreographed by Paula Abdul, who was started her career as a dancer and a choreographer, would become a kind of an 80s pop singer, would go on to be on American Idol. They show the fake video of the Bakersfield massacre, quote unquote. Amber tries to sneak in and get a copy of the unedited video, but she winds up getting caught. And we find out that Damien has, instead of letting Weiss and Laughlin go, has in fact put them in the show as well. So they are going to be in the show with Ben. Ben's loaded into this rocket cage. Weiss and Laughlin are loaded into their own cages, except they're vertical and they look really uncomfortable. Damien gets all set off to launch Ben off into the game zone, but Ben's got one more thing to say.
Killian, I'll be back.
Only in a rerun.
This is not the only obviously this is not the only time that Arnold Schwarzenegger throws "I'll be back" into a movie, but this is also not the only throwback into past Arnold Schwarzenegger movies. So if you take a good look, you can probably see some other ones. The rifle to the face is a good one. So now the guys are in the game zone, and the idea is they're supposed to get through all 4 sections of the game zone, but Weiss and Laughlin have this idea that they want to find the uplink and hack it and get the access code so that they can jam it and send the resistance the information so that they can send their own signal out over the satellite. Meanwhile, we see that the audience gets to pick stalkers, who are people who go into the game zone to hunt the contestants. So the first person who's picked in the audience is Sub-Zero. Sub-Zero is played by Charles Kalani, who goes by the professional name Professor Toru Tanaka. He is a former WWE wrestler. Well, it's WWF when he wrestled for him. He was also a boxer. But he worked with the World Wrestling Federation from the late 60s to the late 70s, was a 3-time tag team champion. He partnered with Mr. Fuji. I remember watching this guy wrestle as a kid. So then we have a fight in an ice rink. Sub-Zero has a hockey stick that apparently is, has a sharp edge to it, and he's trying to kill the guys. He gets Weiss captured into a hockey net that closes in around him. And every time he scores a hit on one of the contestants, then the audience member who picked him gets prizes, including the Running Man home game. It's kind of an in-joke. If you watch game shows in the 70s, there was a lot of home games that were given out to audience members. Ben winds up killing Sub-Zero, fairly brutally, by the way. And, has to, because it's an 80s action film, has to throw another one-liner in.
Hey, Killian! Here is Sub-Zero! Now, Plane Zero!
And we find out that, the Justice Department is calling Killian because they're worried about a stalker being killed. So they select 2 more stalkers to go out into the game zone. This is Buzzsaw and Dynamo. Buzzsaw is a guy on a motorcycle with chainsaws. He is played by Gus Renschwith, who is a professional bodybuilder. Dynamo is electric. He's got an electric suit with, Christmas lights all over it and a weird little electric car, but he could shoot like lightning bolts out of his gauntlets. He is played by Erland van Lith, who's a Dutch actor and also part-time opera singer. So this guy's singing opera. It's Wagner, by the way, if you're interested. Apparently, they've also decided that they're going to put Amber into the game. So they get her set up, and we get a predictably fake news intro of Amber.
She cheated on college exams, had sexual relationships with 2, sometimes 3 different men in a year. And then she met Mad Dog Ben Richards, her confederate, her lover.
That was a lie.
Dear. Let's reunite these little lovebirds.
It's interesting to note here that the announcer Phil is played by Roger Bumpus, who modern audiences, I guess, will know as the voice of Squidward in SpongeBob SquarePants. Anyway, so there's a fight between Ben and Buzzsaw, and Laughlin is with him, and then Weiss and Amber are off trying to find the thing, and they get confronted by Dynamo. Ben kills Buzzsaw very brutally and is able to disable Dynamo. He eventually comes to rescue Amber and Weiss. Weiss hacks the code and gives the code to Amber, but then Dynamo kills him. Laughlin has been mortally wounded, so we're down to Ben and Amber. Killian gets a private video with Ben where he offers him a stalker contract, but Ben refuses it and tells Damien that he's going to come for him. So they decide they're going to send another stalker. This one is called Fireball. He's got a flamethrower. He is played by Jim Brown, who a former NFL player. That's underselling him. Jim Brown was one of the greatest running backs in the history of football. He played for 9 seasons and led the league in rushing for 8 of those 9 seasons. And by the time he retired in 1965, he had basically every rushing record there was. Damien goes to one of his regulars in the audience, an older woman named Agnes, and asks her who she thinks is going to make the next kill. Agnes gives Damien an answer that he's not expecting.
Come on, give it a try. You can do it. What do you think?
Okay, I think the next kill will be made by Ben Richards.
Hold it. Agnes, Richards is a runner. You gotta pick a stalker.
I can pick anyone I choose. And I choose Ben Richards.
Agnes, by the way, here played by Donna Hardy. Donna Hardy retired from being a director at United Way at the age of 66 and decided to give acting a try. This is her first film, and she wound up to go on being in like 24 films, including When Harry Met Sally, The Cable Guy, Truman Show, and just as many TV shows. So good on you, Donna, for having that second career. So anyway, so she has picked Ben Richards to make the next kill. We see the guys who are running the sports book in the street who are taking bets are starting to get action on Ben Richards. The crowd starting to in the studio is starting to support Ben Richards. We go back to the game zone. We see that Amber finds the supposed past winners that the show had been advertising as like living in a tropical paradise, but they are dead. She finds their bodies in a locker room. Fireball finds her and is about to kill her, but Ben shows up and kills Fireball. And they're showing this whole thing on live TV. So we're in the control room, and Captain Freedom comes in wearing a costume and all pissed off because he doesn't want to do like the show business part of it. This is, as I said before, this is Jesse Ventura, former professional wrestler known as The Body. This is his second film. He had also been in Predator in the same year. We'll go on to do about a dozen films, mostly small roles. Then he would become governor of Minnesota for a while, and then he would go back into acting. Was on The Young and Restless for a while. He had a pseudo documentary series called Conspiracy Theory, which was a bunch of fake conspiracy theories. I remember one time he did one, and he was questioning like, what's this secret installation here with all these loading docks? And it was like, it's the back of a shopping mall, dude. So Jesse Ventura. But as Captain Freedom, he is all about the purity of their quote-unquote sport.
I was killing guys like this 10 years ago with my bare hands. I'm not going for any of these tricks. This is a sport of death and honor. Go to the gladiators.
Cap, will you spare me the combat Zen speech? What the hell's the matter with you? Can't you see what's going on out there? This isn't a game. They're betting on Richards up there.
I want to take a minute here to talk about Sven. Sven is the guy who's following Killian around. He's Killian's personal bodyguard who Killian abuses all the time. Sven is his real name. This is Sven Ole Thorsen. He is a Danish bodybuilder and stuntman, and he did some of those strongman competitions. But he is buddies with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he shows up in a lot of Arnold Schwarzenegger films. He was in Conan the Barbarian. He was in Conan the Destroyer. 2 different characters. He was in Red Sonja as a stuntman. He was in Raw Deal. He was in Predator, The Running Man, Red Heat, Twins, Terminator 2, Last Action Hero, but also in Lethal Weapon 2, Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man, On Deadly Ground, Mallrats, Heat, Bulletproof. You know, guy's been in 30 movies or so, 40 movies. It's been a lot. You know, obviously strongman parts, a lot of muscle, henchman, thug kind of guys. But Killian here makes an insult to him, asks him if steroids make him deaf. That will come back to haunt him later. And now we find out that they are going to fictionalize a battle between Ben and Captain Freedom, and we find them using some state-of-the-art digital effects.
Problems. Roll. Stop. Freeze in digital memory.
Activate traveling map. Tony, this better work, pal, or you'll be a digital memory.
Take it easy, Damon. We're loading Richard's image onto the database, and when he's mapped onto the stunt double, you'll never know the difference. All right, boys. Let's see you dance.
So I want to point out, so this is actually pretty cool. And, 1987, the idea of using this, deep fake technology to make an actor digitally look like another actor or another person, something that we do all the time now. But it was really kind of like, oh my God, are they going to be able to do this in movies? Is this real? It's really actually pretty cool in terms of the context of the movie. I'll also point out that the way the movie was originally structured and shot is that they were not going to show you this until later. They were just going to show you the fight between Amber and Ben and Captain Freedom and let the audience think that Captain Freedom had actually killed Ben and Amber. And someone in the studio freaked out about that and thought that the audiences were too dumb to figure that out. And it would turn them off for the movie. And so they wound up restructuring the film and putting this sequence in before the actual fight so that going in that the fight is fake, which that's lame. So anyway, the Resistance finds Ben and Amber. They take them to their little hideout, and Amber tells them that I've got the code for the uplink. And so they're going to go and do the hack, but they also need to go to the studio because once the network finds out the hack is in place, they'll just shunt the satellite, and they want to stop them from doing that. So they need to send a team into the studio to stop the network from doing that. And Stevie is going to lead the team, and Ben thinks that is a really bad idea.
The network will try to shunt to the next one in orbit. Stevie's group is going inside to stop them now.
These kids is a bad move, Mick. They need a leader. They need someone with experience.
I thought you were looking for the door.
I told Killian I'd be back. I wouldn't want to be a liar.
So now we have the team going back into the studio. Amber's with them, and she gets separated off from Ben, and she runs into Dynamo in a hallway. Dynamo is apparently going to assault her. That's kind of creepy. Probably not something that you see in a movie in 2025 anymore. But the assault team winds up going into the main studio. Stevie goes into the control room and gets everybody in the control room under control. Ben goes into the main studio to go after Killian. The audience runs out the door. So Ben confronts Killian, but then Sven comes in, and Killian thinks that Sven is going to save him. But Sven looks at Killian and says, I've got to go score some steroids, and walks away, leaving Killian at Ben's mercy. So Killian tries to talk his way out of it.
You look pissed, Ben. Believe me, you got every right to be. But hey, will you just let me explain? This is television, that's all it is. It's nothing to do with people, it's to do with the ratings. For 50 years, we've told them what to eat, what to drink, what to wear. Don't you understand? Americans love television. They've weaned their kids on it.
But Ben's not having it, and he winds up tossing Killian into the rocket chair that's sitting there ready and waiting, and shoots Killian off into the game zone where there's no net to catch him. So Killian gets killed, and Ben and Amber walk off together, and I guess they're just going to let them go. But anyway, that's the end of the movie. So the movie opened on November 13th, 1987, and had an $8 million opening weekend. It was only released in North America. It wound up doing a total of $38 million on a budget of $27 million, so not a super huge hit. It was really big, though, on home media, VHS, DVD. It was on TV a lot. It's got a 67 on Rotten Tomatoes. It's got a 45 on Metacritic. It's got a B+ on Cinescore. I mean, that's fine. It's not a great movie. It doesn't really hold up all that well. It's kind of campier. If you take it seriously, it's really going to be a disappointment. It's much campier than that. And if you look at it that way, this is just going to be an hour and a half of, just entertainment and one-liners and goofy situations, then fine. You're going to enjoy yourself with it. Roger Ebert, 2.5 stars. Had some interesting things to say about it, I think. He says the movie's problem is that all of the action scenes are versions of the same scenario. The TV host Dawson introduces a killer and his trademark weapons, electrical shock, fire, chainsaws, and then Schwarzenegger faces him in battle. The one element of the movie that is not standard and does have some energy is the TV host itself, with Dawson's performance as the egotistical sleazebag host. Playing a character who's always 3/4 drunk, Dawson chain smokes his way through backstage planning sessions and pops up in front of the cameras as a cauldron of false jollity. Working the audience, milking the laughs and the tears, he's really not much different than most genuine game show hosts, and that's the movie's private joke. Yeah, Roger, I agree with you. Richard Dawson is the best part of this movie. Killian is a fantastic character, and he's absolutely right. The switch between the guy who's backstage, chain smoking, yelling at people, abusive to everybody, and the guy who's out under the lights, charismatic, full of life, working that audience, making the sales pitch. It's really, really stark, and it's really, like he says, probably what most of these guys are actually like. So there was a lawsuit involving this film. So let's do a little backtracking, a little history. So in 1958, an author named Robert Sheckley wrote a short story called The Prize of Peril, which is basically the structure of The Running Man. There's a TV show where a guy goes into this show, and the premise is that he is hunted by professional killers, and it's all done on live TV. So in 1983, there was a French movie called Le Prix du Danger, or The Prize of Peril, which is an adaptation of the short story and is very similar to what we wind up seeing in this film. I will point out that Stephen King wrote his book a year before the French film came out. But anyway, the producers of the French film sued the producers of this film. There was also another adaptation. There was a German film that was an adaptation of the short story. Yeah, the lawsuit didn't really go much of anywhere. In 1989, there was a video game that came out for the Commodore 64, Amiga, and Atari called The Running Man. I remember that one. There was a stand-up console game for like arcades in 1990 called Smash TV, which was basically The Running Man. And I'll point out that The Hunger Games is pretty similar in its premise to The Running Man. In 2021, it was announced that there would be a reboot or a readaptation done at Paramount. That film is due to release, as I'm recording this week. That stars Glenn Powell. It is being directed by Edgar Wright, and it harkens way back to the original novel. This is not, a political prisoner 3-hour TV show. This is a guy who is down on his luck, is trying to raise money. I believe he needs medical treatment for his daughter. And he goes into this game where he's out in the real world and people are hunting him over a longer period of time. So I am really looking forward to that film. But I really enjoyed rewatching. I haven't seen this film probably in 20 years. And just watching it through, it's just kind of like, yeah, this is like right in Arnold Schwarzenegger's wheelhouse in the 80s. This is the kind of stuff that he did. He would lean into gritty with films like Raw Deal or Predator, but then he would go like full comedy with films like Kindergarten Cop and Twins. And this is kind of right in the middle. It's like that action comedy film that he was really good at. I would definitely suggest, if you're going to go see the new Running Man film, that maybe you watch this one first. And hopefully the new Running Man film is better than the remake of Total Recall. The less we say about that, the better. So thank you for listening, and we will catch you next time. I just want to point out, you can check the links in the show notes. We have a YouTube channel. If you prefer to listen to your podcast on YouTube, we have that as well. You could subscribe over there. We also run like dedicated YouTube comment that Randall and I do. We run shorts for all these films, which are like basically like mini trailers that we put together. And then we also have a link to our merchandise store. We have like movie themed t-shirts and stuff, which are pretty cool. So check all that stuff out in the show notes, and we will catch you next time.